Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tatiana's Spiritual Toolbox. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the nature of detachment. These past days, I have been facing the need to understand how to detach from emotional states that can be very almost difficult to process. Difficult emotions, heaviness, fear, pain, sadness, and when we understand where these things come from and how to detach, that's when we enter in a space of neutrality. And from the space of neutrality, we can tap into the immense potential of creation of reality. And then that's how we manifest and attract the reality that slowly starts shaping around us. The first things to do is to understand where our emotions come from and what thoughts create it. Why are we in this state? And so there is a procedure. And why am I saying this? Because even though I've been working so much on myself for years to be a self-aware person, why am I doing this? Why am I thinking that? And then still these emotional states keep coming up, and I still get wrapped up into the nature of attachment, and that's what creates the suffering. And if you have read anything about Buddhism, and well, you would probably understand that there's already all this amazing sacred texts that talk about it. So it's not new, but I'm just delivering it in a different way because it says that, expectation and attachment is the root of suffering, and that we need to let go and be present. Cool! Let go and be present. How do you do that? And that's the thing I got to. This is the point I got last night because I was asking last night to my own guidance, my own higher self, and my own spirit. Okay, I'm tired of this attachment nature, and that's why I feel all this pain and all these feelings, and they are okay because they're part of the human experience, but so is just the nature of love and flow. So only by contrast we feel these things, but by choice we could be in that other space. Let me say that again. By contrast, we feel this pain, the difficulty, the lower side, the black, the dark, by contrast, so we can actually reach the other state. By choice, we can go into that other state and just stay there. And that doesn't mean that you're always in this fluffy mode. It just means that other state that I'm talking about is that neutral where it's the middle, where everything is just calm. It's the 0 point field, because from there anything can be created. So there's no attachment to anything, and there's no expectation of anything in the sense of it needs to be like that. It's more like the whatever you're creating just is, and you observe it as what is and just have that experience and let it go. So yes, all of this we know intellectually from lots of texts, from spiritual teachings. Is nothing new. But if this is new to you and I'm the one telling it to you, then welcome to understanding this. And I'm going to give you a procedure, an actual bullet pointed procedure to let go and to be present. So let's get to it. I even took some notes because last night, not even last night, when I asked Spirit this morning in between dreams, I got it, boom, 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 the bullet points, everything. I wake up, I'm like, oh, wow, thanks. I need to do this then right away. Okay, so there is when you're like meditating, it's like, oh, I need to meditate so I can let go of things. Like, yeah, but how do you do that? So it's not necessarily the conventional form of meditating. It's meditating can be like anything. It's just the act of being fully present with your awareness. That for me is meditating. If it's with eyes closed and just sensing, that is part of it. So that's an awesome thing to do. But when you're in states of anxiety and emotional states and thinking of things, and you're in your mind and then in your emotions, it's very hard to then just go like, oh, I'm just going to be all this blissful. Trust me, if you've tried it and it didn't work out, yeah, it's difficult. I'm telling you all this by experience. So I came to this process. It is also a thought process. So it's not an emptying the mind process. It is a thought process of a different nature that starts with observing. So in order to observe, what is to observe? To observe is also to engage the mind in a different way. So it's not to create thoughts, it's to have like a superior thought observing the thoughts. Like thinking the thoughts, observing them. So it's a different kind or level of mind. So this is like the higher awareness. And from this higher awareness, or this second layer of thought, you will first observe and then classify those other thoughts, the usual mental thoughts that create these emotional states. So first, is it a memory of an actual past history, something that just recently happened that created some emotional turmoil? And it's very real because emotions are the way we navigate reality and how we can assess, where to move next. So classify it. Is this a memory that I'm just going over in my head again and again, and it's recreating the emotional state that right now it's not the case because it's a different moment? So am I recreating that state? So it's past, what we call the past, memory or past history. Is it a story? The difference between the past history and the story is that the story is what I tell myself about that memory or the analysis of that past history. This happened because of this, because of that, and then this is all the beliefs I have, and it comes from maybe all of my past history when I was a child or whenever. It just comes from somewhere that I create. It's a story I create about that past experience. So that's another level of thoughts. And the third one, is it a fantasy, projection, or future possibility of desire that something might come in my field? So that's the future that has not existed. So it's not linked to history, it's linked to a visualization of an ideal or something that I would like to happen in a certain way. And that's also it's somewhere else than here. And we will talk about that a little bit later, because that's also the one that helps us shape the next creation stages. But regardless, sometimes we have this fantasy and then we just stay there in the fantasy, the daydream, and then it goes nowhere because it's just going in a loop. And it's also linked to an emotion sometimes, and the emotion is not necessarily the emotion of creating that possibility. Sometimes it's an emotion of, you're like have anger, and then you're creating this scenario where you create some kind of tit for tat situation or something. You're just creating scenarios that never happened, that could happen or will never happen, but they're just there, or parallel scenarios. So those are the three things: the memory, the story, and the fantasy. Classify that thought. So when you're in these emotional states and mindset states and you need to get out of them, therefore be out of the mind, use that other higher mind to classify. Once you're classifying, you're like, oh, okay, this is what it is. Then you bring them to the present, this classification, and then remind yourself. This is the second stage. Remind yourself with another thought process that none of these correspond to this present moment of awareness, of sensation, of being here in this level of consciousness where we are at. Therefore, these are not real. They are real in the mind field, but they are not real in your perception field, where you actually create this particular reality. We're not talking about other realities or multidimensional realities. We're talking about what we project here on this, third dimensional field, where it's physical, where we're humans. Just wanted to make that clear. So then you observe. And third thing, you use your sensory perception to perceive the present moment. And this is what constitutes the being present. Be present, be present. How do I be present? By accessing your actual sensory, what was given to us, like smell and touch and sight. And just observe what is in the present, what's around you. Not what's in your mind, that's not there. It's what's actually around you. The smells, the sensations of the body. If you move around, you could even be aware of little things like how your feet, touch the ground, and just place awareness. Or the easiest one, and we've heard this a million times, is the breath. That's like the easiest to access. It's like, how does the breathing process feel? And then you go, oh, yeah, then there is a process of observation of that. That's not necessarily classifying everything, but it's just sensing it. So it's not necessarily thinking about it, it's sensing it. That's it, sensing. There is a difference between thinking about what I'm sensing and just sensing it. So access the just sensing, which is just sensing. If you move, you have I'm sensing. It's moving, but I don't have to analyze it or think about that movement. I just moved and sensed it. I smelled and I smelled something. Leave it there. Okay, so that's the third thing to do. And while you are in this experience of sensing, do not classify it with a judgment or an emotion. Oh, I'm sensing and I don't like it, or this sucks, or this is, don't think about it precisely. Don't think about it, but keep it in a neutral state of sensing. You don't have to put a label or a judgment on it, because usually that's how we create. That's the first step to creating stories from histories, is to label again. I don't like this. This is, it's neutral. This is just an experience. And just that's it, an experience. No labeling. No good, no bad. No, I like it, I don't like it. Then you can go. This is when you go into, okay, now that I've sensed that this is my present, absolute present moment, what can I do with it to create the next stage of my experience? Or you can call it the next stage of my life. You don't have to go and create your whole life, just the next moment of your experience. Because this is actually how life gets created, moment by moment of you creating it. And if you do it consciously, then you might be better off at the result of what you will look back at. And actually the nature of detachment is creating that moment and then letting it pass, creating that moment, next moment, always being that same process of weaving, like whoop whoop, you weave one little moment, it's gone, weave next moment, it's gone. So you can always create the new moment. I did talk about it in the last video I posted, I think, or the one about the expectation, some of my thoughts about it, because that is part of this process. When I said that there's a difference between expecting and desiring and the attachment to it. So what we're dealing here with, it's not that we can't create an idea or an ideal. And that's why I said when you go into fantasy, that's where you go into the field of, oh, what next? If you stay in a big fantasy, then you just leave it there, like, oh, I'm dreaming and I have a huge house and a pool and this and that, and well, that's fine, you can attract that for sure, but if you just stay in the fantasy of it, it's not going to do anything. It's more like sensing what now at this right moment feels right to do, and that's something you actually feel from this point in your person. the heart, literally. This is where it actually comes from. It's like physiological, and not the physiological heart, but I guess it comes from that intelligent network of neurons that exist in the heart. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go and check out Heart Math Institute, so that intelligence of the heart, or the second brain. But it feels here, it's in this center. And when you focus on that point, and when you love to do something, or I just love to ride a bicycle, or I would love to do this at this moment, focus on what you would love to do right this moment. Not what you have to do, because there is this, I have to do this because I have a job and I have to do this. Like, this is a little bit what has, I think, distorted the whole way of why we live, how we live up, or how we have lived up to now. Because all of these societal expectations of you have to do this or else what? And this is when we start going back to, in this moment, there's a higher guidance that uses your heart to move you through the next moment. And when you really tune into that, you can't go wrong. And this is what we would call the higher self coming in and saying, we've got this all under control. And you've probably heard a lot say, like, just let go, go with the flow, connect to your higher self. But how do we do that? Like that. Once you're fully present, you don't do anything but sense, what would be the next thing I would love to do now? And it could be like me right now, sitting doing this video was the next thing I wanted to do. I usually have a routine where I do my breakfast and this and that, and then guess what? No, what I felt like doing, and listen to what I'm saying, what I felt like doing was this video. Why? I don't know. Because I got this insight, and maybe this video is going to reach millions of people, who knows, that need this in order to understand how to themselves free themselves from this nature of attachment and pain. Maybe it's just that simple. And that's why my higher guidance, that higher level of consciousness, said, you're just going to do this now. And you'll hear other spiritual teachers talking about these things. I particularly follow one person that I really like how he talks. It's Feel Good. If you want to Google it or see his YouTube channel, he speaks about being a dot, and I think that's exactly the same thing. He says it in his own words, but I say it in my own words from my experience of how I'm entering this kind of living. And now at this moment in time, this is 2020, it's March. This doesn't mean that if you're watching this in 2021 or 2022, it's not valid for you. It's whenever you're watching it that it's valid for you, because that's when you're getting the awareness of this information. But right now, March 2020, we know we're in the middle of a pandemic, and it has created a lot of havoc. And now, more than ever, we need these tools of real observation of what's in our actual environment, and not only in our minds. We're creating stories and histories and fantasies, and the fantasies could be both negative and positive. It's not just a fantasy that I can create. It could be a worst case scenario. That is also a fantasy of something that has not happened. So this is why at this moment I think it's very important to use these tools. Bring yourself to the present. Detach from whatever experience. And if you're having a hard experience, like a difficult one, because you're maybe, and I have to say, unfortunately, some people are having right now really difficult experiences with this coronavirus, and I don't really want to talk about it because I'm just moving beyond it. But if that is the case, know that it's also the experience. You remember when I said do not label the experience as this is horrible, I hate it, this sucks, or even this is wonderful, amazing. Just don't label. Stay in the neutral, just with the sensation of it. And it can be an uncomfortable sensation, yes, for sure. But if you make it mean more, then that's what's going to put you into more suffering. The whole point of all of this is to achieve a state of neutrality, of detachment. And detachment is not the same as indifference and aloofness. Not same thing. Indifference is like, well, I don't care about it. But being indifferent is actually being more attached to it, but moving away from it, or wanting to move away. So indifference is not detachment. Detachment is true observation of the neutral. True observation of the neutral, moment by moment. That's it. I know it seems very simple. It's not that easy to grasp or understand, but if you manage to do this process, this bullet-pointed process, one by one, you know what? It actually works. Finally, I could understand how to process the process of detachment. Why? Because I've been in emotional states and I asked for this. This came and I tried it, and I'm going to keep trying it all the time. And just be present with the sensations in neutrality. I hope this video helped you, gave you some information. Please feel free to leave comments, to share. If you like this information, share it with others that may benefit. Subscribe to the channel, tap the little bell. This is in YouTube. If it's on Facebook, well, go to YouTube and subscribe to my channel, Tatiana's Spiritual Toolbox, or my page on Facebook. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful, beautiful day. Create something magnificent with your now moment, with this present moment, and be at peace. Neutrality. Neutral. Neutral. Infinity. Neutral. Love you all.